All right, we're going to get started. Today we're going to talk about this line of duty death in the Santa Ana Fire Department, December 29th in 2009. I'm sure most of you have probably been on a dumpster fire before, and you might ask yourself, how'd this guy die because of a dumpster fire? And actually, it's not the only case. There's another one that I didn't look at, but it was a dumpster fire that translated into the building, and then guys wound up falling through the roof because they were up on the roof checking. This one is just pretty much a dumpster fire. And it's got some special circumstances in it. So we've all been involved in pre-plans before, but how many of you thought about when you do your pre-plan to ask them about what kind of waste they have or about their dumpster? Anybody? Not really. You know, we have some different facilities obviously in our district. So let's see if this works. All right. 2017, just some general stat I thought I'd throw in there, which I thought this was kind of a high number, 18% for non-fire emergency and 17% in training. That seems 25 or 30, what is that, 40, 35% together? That seems like quite a bit. And obviously only 28% on fire ground. So on this specific fire, there was one fatality, which I laid his information out in front of you there, you guys can share. There's 8 people injured. It's the Santa Ana Fire Department. It's a very rural fire department in Wisconsin. One station, 25 volunteers, which nowadays I think they actually have less than that. They have 7 apparatus, 1,000 residents, and 20 calls per year. And I was just looking at their website this morning, and the last information they had on there from 2014 showed about 25 calls. So it's pretty rural area. So the facility that they responded to, they've been called to before, but they've never had a fire. According to this, they've had no documented SOGs. So Stephen Peanut Koser, born on 4/15 of 76 and died 12/29 of 2009. He's the youngest of 5 brothers and sisters. He had a long-time girlfriend with 2 kids. He was preceded in death by 1 child. And he joined the fire department at age 17, so he kind of got started early. He was 33 at the time of his death. So he'd been on for 15 years. Those are his qualifications. Really, it didn't say anything about firefighter 1 and 2 or anything. This is what the CDC or the NIOSH had said he had. And a lot of the guys you'll see in here are pretty much the same. The other admin and technical courses, there's nothing specific about those, and a lot of guys are listed as that. So these are the 8 people that were injured. A junior firefighter was on for 4 months, which he'd be like one of our explorers. He's under the age of 18. A guy on for a year, 3.5 years, and again you can see that most of these guys have pretty basic certifications. The most on the scene was the chief. He had 31 years on. And this is basically all these administrative people had those certifications. Not a lot of training. They did have some incident command training. So the company we're talking about, where the dumpster was located, does aluminum sand castings. Anybody know what sand casting is? Heard about it? They basically take sand, make a mold, and they can make car parts or whatever you can think of to make with aluminum. They make a mold and pour molten aluminum in it, and then they break apart the sand and you've got your part. They've been in business for 73 years. They use 375,000 pounds of aluminum each month. And I'm sure it's probably more than that now. The department was familiar with the facility. Some of the guys on the department worked there. And they had switched from 3 shifts to 1 day shift at the time after they had walked through the building before. So this is the timeline. Pretty quick, actually. And these guys got up pretty quick. 7:33 at night, so I'm assuming there probably wasn't too many people in the facility in the first place. 8 minutes, the first truck was there on the scene, and it's 5 miles from the station. A minute later, another truck arrives, another minute, a couple minutes after that, and then 8 minutes later, they had an explosion. So all this happened within 20 minutes. Again, I jumped. 5 miles from the firehouse. It's a clear day. In Wisconsin, it's 14 degrees, 10-mile-an-hour wind. They did have a 4-foot snowbank kind of around where they've been plowing because they'd had a recent heavy snowfall. This is what they found when they arrived. 2-foot bluish-green flames. What do we know about colored flames? They're usually not good. Colored flames, colored smoke. They had a 10-foot reddish glow near the bottom of this dumpster. They pulled an 1 3/4 line. They put an attic ladder up to inspect the contents of the dumpster. And this is what they found, and what they were told by the staff, is that it had aluminum shavings, floor sweepings, and a 55-gallon drum. And they said there was no magnesium in there. Mostly what they deal with is aluminum again. So they set up their dump tank. They got another 1 3/4 set up about 20 feet away, and they were right near that snowbank. So they had 700 gallons of water put on this fire at 50 psi. No effect. They decided, let's switch to foam. Foam has water in it, right? So they put another 100 gallons of water. No effect. At 1953, the IC was calling to discontinue the foam operations. That's when they saw sparking and a sudden explosion. So this is the result. Kind of see where the dump tank's set up. There's a big substation over here. The dumpster that's on fire is back here. And then it landed over here. The guy that was killed was thrown over 50 feet back over to here. And then the other guys that were injured were quite, fairly close to it, but not as close as that guy. So basically the injuries were due to a blast. So that's, on the top left, you'll see the picture of what the dumpster looked like beforehand. And kind of on the top right is what the contents would be like. And afterwards, you can see the barrel that's exploded, and then that's what the dumpster looked like after the explosion. So again, remember they used 375,000 pounds of aluminum. So they're thinking in the dumpster there was about a month's worth of shavings and floor sweepings and stuff like that in that dumpster. So I can't imagine how much it would really be. The founder floor sweeping has processing fluids, which is probably some sort of hydrocarbon, like an oil or something like that. And then slag barrels, which is a molten liquid metal that they dump off into barrels. It's a solution of silicates and oxides, just junk basically left over from their processing. All right, this is what they think happened. This is what's called a thermite reaction, and a short video clip. It's a composition of metal powder and metal oxides, and once it started, it burns on its own. It basically creates its own oxygen and just does its own thing. This is actually how they weld railroad track together, is what they call thermite welding. Adding water, it creates hydrogen gas because the hydrogen off the water breaks apart, which obviously we know hydrogen is a flammable gas, so it just basically feeds itself. And this is, what happened here is the most common type of reaction. Let's see if we can make this work. It's a real short clip that shows you how quickly and violently. That's a 1 quart pot. So you multiply that times what was in that dumpster. Watch out. We'll keep going. Make it out. This place don't need the house to hold on. So one of the things they contributed to it was the shift reduction at the facility. I told you they went from 3 shifts to 1. So they changed how they do the operations. Normally the slag is cooled for 24 hours. This time they expected maybe 1.5 to 3 hours. When they put it in the barrels, it's about 1,500 degrees. And they let it cool, like I said, for 24 hours. This time they think it maybe got down to 700 degrees. And aluminum is basically melts at 660 degrees. One of the things that the fire department contributed to was using a wet extinguishing agent on a combustible metal fire. Lack of hazmat awareness training. They didn't have any kind of documented pre-plans. Even though they had been walking through the facility before, they just never documented anything. They didn't do a real good size up or a risk assessment prior to, again, like the pre-plan. And again, they had no documented SOGs for basically any kind of incident. So in recommendations, they want to ensure that high-risk facilities are pre-planned annually. Do we have any high-risk facilities in our district? A few. One of them right down the street here. Specific training on high-risk facilities with unique hazards. And we're going to hit some of that a little bit later too. Development, implement, and enforcement of SOGs, which is something that we've been training on. When we do training, we kind of review our SOG with the training so we know everybody is on the same page and knows what the SOG says. Proper scene size up, risk assessment for high-risk occupancies, and then a documented junior firefighter program to ensure safe operations and incidents, which is something, again, that we do. And then full PPE prior to operating in or near the hazard. One of the guys was sent back to put an SCBA on because he didn't have it on at first. So that's why that's about. Facilities using combustible metals should implement a bulk dry extinguishing system. What's a bulk dry extinguishing system? Anybody see anything like that?
Or like a pouch?
That's like just a big dump system that's designed around those areas that are just designed.
That's exactly what I thought, Matt. A specific system that's designed in that function area, but it's not.
No?
It's basically 5-gallon buckets or a storage facility where they could put a metal extinguishing agent and scoop it up with a front loader or shovels. And basically, yeah, you could just dump it over. But they do sell it in pails that you can use with a scoop shovel. So I found that kind of surprising. And then facilities using combustible metals should have a specially trained fire brigade. Most companies probably aren't going to do that. They might have some safety people that might be aware of what needs to happen, but they're probably just going to evacuate and clear the area. Some of the applicable guidelines that we have is our incident command guideline, which I believe we recently reviewed, SCBA, our PPE, our ride-along SOG, which I included there, basically to say that no circumstance should a rider engage in operational procedures while on fire or EMS. Our only exception is explorers, racking hose, cleaning tools, overhaul, or assisting an investigator if permitted by the incident commander. Only if the incident basically has been mitigated. So we have our explorers riding post policy, and we have a pre-plan policy. These are some of the possibilities that I thought of when I came across this line of duty death. Obviously, we just had a major incident at the rail yard recently. Now, it wasn't a combustible metals fire, but it was a combustible fuel fire, which could be a disaster as well. But they do carry loads of combustible metals throughout. You know, they have shavings and all that stuff that are carried in their gondola cars or whatever. We have Mears Machine. We have Phoenix Tank. And basically, any of these dumpsters or compactors around here, we don't know what could be in them. People just dump stuff. So, anybody know of any others that I haven't listed?
What do they do with the machine, the mirrors machine? I've often wondered.
Mirrors?
I'm fairly new, so I don't.
They do a lot of custom parts. They use a lot of metals.
Specialty metals.
Yeah, specialty metals. And
Titanium.
yeah. So
Have
they
we ever reached out to them to go out there, or?
we haven't been out there in a few years. I know we've done some EMS calls there, but it is one place I know that uses. In Three's area, there used to be an aerospace place
Acme.
out there.
Acme right down here.
Yeah, Acme Masking. Obviously, they have
Up on Old 36.
all kinds of stuff in there. I was trying to think of the name of it. There's a place, it used to be on Main Street.
Yeah, they.
It's an auto place, finer detail.
Is it changed? Yeah. Even a car fire. Think about the combustible metals that are in car fires. You know, you hit a car fire with a hose line, and all of a sudden it starts to spark. Magnesium in the dash, magnesium in the rims, magnesium wherever in a car. So, got the junkyards. Think about all those places going up. What kind of stuff are they throwing? Are they specifically recycling certain parts? You know, because of the type of metal it is? I don't know. So that's something to think about if you guys get called to any of those facilities. So this is what we have to deal with a combustible metal fire. We have our Class D extinguishers at 30-pound sodium chloride. Based on magnesium, they'll cover 4 square feet or 6 pounds of metal. Is that going to work on a dumpster fire full of
Probably.
anything? Probably not. And we have how many of these?
4, 5.
Yeah. They take about 24 seconds to discharge, and they have a 36-foot range depending on how you use them. One of the things they have is roughly a 15-to-1 product to agent ratio. So basically, if you have a pound of metal, it's going to take maybe about 15 pounds of your extinguisher to put that fire out or to control it, because it may not go out. The idea is to cover the product with the agent, and you're excluding the oxygen from that product. And it's not typically like you think of when you have a fire extinguisher. You don't want to pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. One, you're going to waste product or your extinguishing agent as you walk up to it. You want to use more of a rain down method, and that has a fairly long wand on it so that you can reach out and get to stuff. And you want to make sure that you try to cover that whole area. The idea is basically you're going to make like a crust on top of the product. And they've been known to reignite because they burn, metals burn at a super high temperature. We also have the nozzle that has the big bell on it, and then you can take that off and you can use it as a straight stream too. So you can use it as an indirect method if you needed. So some of the things that I think that can be learned from this is that our pre-plans provide a lot of good information for us. Like I said, if you walk into one of these facilities like we're talking, Acme or Mears, and you're doing a pre-plan there, you might ask about the dumpster, what they're throwing away, what they're recycling. Obviously, dumpster fires and trash fires can be unpredictable. You don't know what's in them. There's some school of thought out there that a dumpster fire should be a completely defensive fire, and you should put like a deck gun on it and just fill it up and be done with it. Stay away from it. Don't put anybody near it. And obviously, combustible metals, any kind of fire like that with a combustible metal can be a challenge for fire departments because obviously, as we just talked about, we don't have that many combustible metal extinguishers to put it out. And we're going to have how many engines there or whatever. I don't know. Do the surrounding departments carry any of those? Do anybody know?
I'm sure they do.
So,
Well, it's still not going to be enough.
yeah, it's still not going to be, especially a dumpster fire, it's not going to be enough.
Any idea how much you might have, how much the airport carries? I would imagine they have pretty big.
That I do not know. The airport may have some, they may have a bulk system. Maybe not.
I mean, like carry Class B.
So,
Okay.
One of the interesting things I found too, with this, through the extinguishing company, is some of the codes. I didn't put it in the slide, but that on a combustible metal facility, they have to have the combustible extinguisher or the Class D extinguisher in that area. They're not supposed to have any Class A, B, or C's around that unless they have Class A, B, or C fire possibility near there. It also says that if they produce combustible metals only so much within a week that they don't have to provide that. It's kind of weird how they do it. So they can make as much as they want, as long as it's in a certain time frame, it doesn't matter. So that was kind of an interesting thing. Obviously, Class D fires are pretty unique. Again, you know, they make hydrogen gas. You add water to it, it's just going to make more hydrogen gas. So water on a Class D fire is not what you want to do. You can't overcome it. So basically, if you know you have a Class D fire, we're going to have to try to find another method of extinguishing. We can try to get ahead of it a little bit with our extinguishers, but maybe the facilities, again, if we go do some pre-plans, that we'll find that they have stuff that we're not aware of. So, any questions? Anybody have anything unusual you've come across like that in a combustible metal fire? Or? All right. That's all I have.